All right. So starting with roll call for September 2025 Gender Equity Commission meeting. As I call your name, please say here if you are present. Deborah Gross, Nicole Turney,
Here.
thank you. Avery Hart,
Here.
Devin Talaferro,
Here.
Terry Minor Spencer,
Here.
Julian McLean, Rachel Shepard, Crystal Wamalua,
Here.
and last but not least, Audra Mitchell.
Here.
Wonderful. We have met quorum for our September 2025 meeting and we can begin. So I have shared the agenda with everybody. I'm just going to go through the first few items since it's the first meeting of the Gender Equity Commission of 2025. We do not have a reading or approval of prior minutes, but in the future, for this sort of meeting, we will be approving the minutes of the previous meeting. We also do not currently have any public comment. We're going to create a space on the city's Gender Equity Commission page in which you can submit public comment. That is very similar to how it is done for the LGBTQIA plus commission. And so in the future, if anybody wants to leave ideas, concerns, recommendations for the commission, they would be submitted through our website, and then I would get an email and be able to read them out loud during the meetings. Following up with the next thing is report of special committees. As said before, because we haven't had another meeting this year, we do not currently have any special committees. If an issue comes up that the commission wants to dive deeper into, whether that be recommendations, research, policy work, we can always create special committees to help to oversee some of that work, but at this time there isn't any. And the last kind of item that I'll just go through quickly is unfinished business. As said before, we do not have any unfinished business. All of the work today will be new business. Any questions before I go into new business from the commissioners? Wonderful. All right, let's get right into it. So the first two items in new business, I'll start with the first one, is an item for discussion. It is an internal policy within the city government, within HR, that is called pregnancy loss leave. The summary of that is that if you are experiencing the loss of a pregnancy, a miscarriage, if you terminate a pregnancy, if you have IVF fail, or this happens to your partner, you can have up to 3 days of PTO given by the city that does not impact any of your other personal time off. I'm sure everybody can agree that makes total sense, and especially if you are experiencing any of those things, you absolutely should get some time off. The difficulty there is that there's a little bit of a privacy concern. You would have to be telling someone that you are experiencing a miscarriage or the loss of a pregnancy in some way, or that your partner is experiencing that. And so this came up first with the LGBTQIA plus commission, where in some other cities within the United States, instead of pregnancy loss leave, they have reproductive leave, which is a much more kind of accommodating umbrella term to say anything under reproductive health, anything from, all the stuff that I just mentioned, as well as any gender affirming care that you might need time off for. If a cisgender man was to get a vasectomy, he might want a day or two off. It creates a little more kind of accessibility overall to be able to take that time off without having to be as explicit about exactly why you have to take that time off. And so it is for commissioners to discuss whether or not we would like to have a recommendation to change some of the wording and language of that policy to be reproductive leave or not. But I will leave it open to the commissioners to be able to talk or ask questions regarding that policy.
Do we have a copy of what it currently says right now?
Yes, I did share it in an email, but I'm happy to pull it up as well and share my screen. Just give me just a moment.
Oh, wait, never mind. I found it.
Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna share. All right, can everyone see the pregnancy loss leave policy, operating policy? Okay, wonderful. So I'll just go through this pretty quickly. It says this establishes guidelines and eligibility for a leave of absence due to a pregnancy loss. It grants an employee up to 3 days of absence from work without loss of pay, whenever that employee or their partner is experiencing the loss of a pregnancy. And then it goes into kind of what the definition of that is, as I was just talking about, things like miscarriage, stillbirth, in vitro fertilization, not working, surrogacy loss, etc. And it talks through the procedure of you being granted 3 days off. What you're experiencing has to, be under that definition of some sort. Um, that there's some regulations as to how that employee needs to be like a full-time employee to be able to use this time off. You can take it consecutively or at different times, like following procedures or on a designated day. And then there's notification requirements of must notify by telephone or email, that there has to be a maintained record, etc. Does anybody have any questions regarding any of this policy?
I
I
don't.
think
It's a lot. It's a lot of wording would need to be changed.
Well, yes, it would be more like adding some language here where it wouldn't be just pregnancy loss leave. It would be like reproductive leave, and then it would maybe list some of those examples, but it would give kind of an overall definition as to like being able to take time off regarding anything related to your reproductive health, like something along those lines, so that it would be a lot more flexible for, women going through menopause that, desperately need some time off, or somebody experiencing terrible menstrual pains, or, like there's such a variety as to why you might need time off regarding your reproductive system. And um, while it's so important that we ensure that folks are able to take time off, especially if they're experiencing miscarriage, stillbirth, etc., it also creates some discomfort when you're having to tell possibly your manager or somebody from HR you don't know that you're in the midst of a miscarriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Because my concern was, you know, not taking anything away, but as you said, you'll be adding language.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, we don't want to create any more barriers to folks experiencing these things, but we also know like they deserve a little bit more privacy in those instances, as well as the fact that there's a lot of people that might need this time off for other things regarding their reproductive health, but might not have access to it right now because of the way that this language is kind of formed.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts on this? Yeah, please go ahead.
for me, changing this to more of a reproductive leave policy just makes it more inclusive for folks of all gender identities. To me, the pregnancy loss, while I think is a good first step,
Mhm.
making sure that we're not excluding, real life scenarios that people go through, from everyone on the gender spectrum. So to me, adding that language and centering it around reproductive systems, I think to me just is way more inclusive. And I think it also gives people the freedom to feel like they can take the time off and not have to really go into nitty-gritty detail with, say, their manager or HR about what the situation is,
Exactly.
as long as it's covered under that reproductive care. To me, I think that nips two issues for me in the bud. If we can expand that language.
Wonderful. Any other thoughts on this policy or maybe the direction we'd like to go?
Yeah, I just was wondering, I may have missed this. Is there like a limit that someone can use this? Because in my experience, like people like can't have birth control or they just don't want to take birth control. They have like multiple pregnancies in a year. And they need additional options for this throughout the year. Is that going to be available for like for people? Is there a limit on that? I don't know if I missed
That's a
that.
great question. As of now, I don't see there being like a can use this once per year type of thing. I think it's just about ensuring that you it says that HR might require proof. So, there might be a situation where you say, hey, I'm currently experiencing miscarriage and I need 3 days off. And maybe 6 months later, you say, hey, I'm experiencing a miscarriage and I need 3 days off. And they might say, okay, well, I need a doctor's note. This is to say, I don't want to take that ability away from HR, but that would also give more flexibility for somebody to say that their physician can just write a note saying that they need 3 days of reproductive leave and not necessarily have to say, oh, that person just experienced a miscarriage, for instance. But yes, if you experienced multiple pregnancies within a year and you needed to take this time off, I don't see any language in this policy that would prevent that.
And then my next question would be like, what is the level of proof that people would be requiring, especially if it's someone who was like trans or anything like that? Just what kind of proof would they be asking for? I think that's very important. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to fully disclose like their full medical record to be able to have 3 days off of work.
Exactly. So, from the language that currently exists here, it says they require some sort of proof or medical certification. That can be as simple as a note or a letter. I would want to emphasize if we are expanding this language that they just need like confirmation from a physician that they need to take this reproductive leave rather than it being like this person just went through a hysterectomy and thus they need 3 days off. Or this person just had a stillbirth and thus they need 3 days off. But yeah, it would be something along the lines of having your PCP or any medical provider, even if you went to like emergency care, being able to write some sort of doctor's note with their contact info in case, not that I think HR is going to be contacting doctors, but just for the confidential medical file to be able to confirm that they have a doctor's, I guess, support in being able to take these 3 days off.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts here? And if anybody needs to see a specific section, I'm happy to scroll to it. All right. Well, seeing no other comments, does anybody want to make a motion
A
about?
motion.
Oh,
I
please.
make a motion. Yeah, I motion to vote and set the proper.
Yeah, something along the lines of like it would be like I motion to approve this recommendation on behalf of the Gender Equity Commission.
Okay, well then I motion to approve this recommendation on behalf of the Gender Equity Commission.
Thank you, Devin. Does Devin have a second?
I second.
Wonderful.
Can I have a point of clarification that
Yes.
we are voting to approve the changes to this document? So, okay, I wanted to make sure that I was clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that we would be it would be my responsibility, just for everyone's context, to create some drafted language as to what this would look like a little more towards that reproductive leave umbrella that we just talked about. You are recommending that I make those changes, and then I can still present them back to you for that final look before we were to move forward with like going to HR directly with kind of these changes and seeing what we could do next. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, great. This is now our full-on vote. If you are in favor of the recommendation to edit this pregnancy loss leave policy to be reproductive leave, please say aye.
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 Perfect. Wonderful. All those, that's my bad. All those not in favor, please say nay. All right, that is a unanimous vote. Wonderful. All right. Our next agenda, here, let me stop sharing my screen here. Our next agenda item is another recommendation that already has been through the LGBTQIA+ Commission. As I'm sure nobody is surprised, there are some things that kind of impact both of those communities for gender equity and LGBTQIA rights. And so sometimes there's going to be recommendations that both commissions can support, and that actually gives them a lot more validity when they are going to our internal departments or to City Council. So the second recommendation is providing free menstrual products in all city-owned facilities. So that is to say the city county building where I currently work would have free menstrual products, as well as things like our recreation centers and our senior centers. Um, there isn't a current policy. This is just a recommendation, which we would have to create some language. So if you want to have a little bit of discussion prior to any sort of recommendation being made, we can do that now.
One item, I worked on a project for a former client of mine that hit this issue. And one of the things that I learned during that project was that ensuring free products in all gendered restrooms, not just women's gendered restrooms, is really important for folks to have access in the restrooms that they need it. So I would want to make sure that any language included menstrual products in all restrooms, despite the gender of that restroom. Absolutely,
I couldn't agree more. We also know that beyond just trans men and non-binary people using men's bathrooms, that also, like, somebody might have a nosebleed and need a tampon. I'm not going to stop them from being able to use those products in those moments. And so, absolutely in support of that. We definitely would want to make sure that there are menstrual hygiene products available in all restroom facilities, whether they be a larger kind of multi-stall restroom or a single stall restroom. Any other thoughts here?
You said the rec centers, senior centers?
Yes.
And
So those aren't, I don't want to say that's every single facility, but those are the vast majority of our facilities that the city specifically operates. So the city county building, for instance, we have a lot of folks that are looking for resources. Some folks are unhoused. I think it's really important that if they're using these facilities, they have access to hygiene products,
Yes.
as well as our rec centers. We have student activities in there. We want to make sure that young boys and girls have access to those products if they need them while they're in those facilities, as well as, senior centers. There's not only folks that are supporting seniors, like staff there, but also visitors and educators that come in to support our seniors. And we would want to make sure that everybody has access to those products.
That just to go with the products that are available, can this lead for include safe sex products as well in city buildings? External and internal condoms and whatever else that can be available for people. Just because I know that the health department does have like those programs, but I don't know if people outright know about that. And then I know that they like recently just told one of the hospitals that, hey, you all can afford your own condoms. So these need to be passed out to like our communities. So I'm in 100% support of them telling hospitals that you can buy your own products and then having the free ones in our community centers and available to people that really need them and can't afford them.
I, off the top of my head, do not see a reason as to why we could not provide safe sex, things like condoms, internal and external condoms in city facilities. I guess my only thought would be we don't currently provide really anything in those facilities at all. So I think it would be a big jump, but I don't see any reason as to why we couldn't create that recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
With those products, is there, if we do move forward with those types of products as well, could there be some messaging included on resources for, HIV, AIDS, things like that, like STI and STD testing, so that, people who, may need access to those resources would have that sort of at their fingertips. It might be a way to, utilize those products, but also get a message across to give people access to resources.
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue with that. I think it would just be about us partnering with existing community organizations and that are already doing some of that work and ensuring that they're okay with providing those materials or that information in those city facilities. But I think that would be more of us just figuring out kind of a partnership with them of like, hey, are you okay for us to put your phone number or your information kind of either on these products or next to them, something along those lines, maybe something like they have window, like mirror clings in a lot of like airport bathrooms, university restrooms that are either something regarding like SD testing or HIV testing, or sometimes they're like human trafficking kind of oriented. So something along those lines, like I think that would be definitely doable as far as just making that recommendation and then going forward with figuring out who to partner with to provide that info and that resource, and then going one step further to figure out exactly what that looks like to get them in all of the city facilities.
Yeah, that's what I had written down to
Yeah.
have something on the like in the back door of how they have it at the airports.
Mm,
Are you safe? Are you being trafficked or something like that with the city logo
okay.
throughout the buildings, the city buildings.
Love that.
Would the products be available only in sort of public facing buildings, or would this be put through? So, my husband works at, environmental services,
Mhm.
and, that's not a public facing building, but there are a lot of employees there. Would that be something that we'd want to expand to those types of areas as well?
Yes, absolutely. So the mindset I definitely had as I was helping to develop this recommendation was around the fact that the CCB is the city county building that I work in currently. Public or kind of ordinary residents can come on any floor, but the vast majority of these floors are really only having staff on them, and we would still want to ensure that staff have access to those products. So exactly, I can't think of every single, we have like salt domes and things like little facilities that might have like 2 or 3 personnel. But the nice thing about this is that if we were to have a broad recommendation of something like we recommend that free menstrual products and like internal external condoms or something along those lines be provided in all city-owned facilities with restrooms, then that is going to be including to all of those smaller facilities that might only have a few people there. Yeah. Other questions or thoughts on this? This is really, really great ideas here. Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I motion to move on. Are we on the safe sex products to be provided in the language?
So you can do 2 separate motions. You could try to wrap it all up in one. I can help you with that language if you'd like.
Let's wrap it up in one.
Okay. So something along the lines of it would be like I motion for the recommendation to include menstrual and safe sex products in all city-owned facilities.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I motion to accept the menstrual products throughout the city's buildings, the rec centers, senior centers, downtown city county buildings, and safe sex products.
Wonderful. Does Terry have a second?
I will second.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And all those in favor of us providing free menstrual and safe sex products in all city-owned facilities with restrooms, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Give an extra second because I don't want to cut anybody off. And all those against, please say nay. All right, that is unanimous. I want to give everybody a huge shout out to the fact that we just finished our first 2 recommendations. Yay!
Yay.
Yay, how wonderful. Okay, so the next thing that we have on our agenda is a little bit more, I don't think we'll be able to vote on anything specifically today, but I do think it's important to give some kind of foundation to this. So one of the requirements or responsibilities of the Gender Equity Commission is to create a 5-year gender equity action plan for the city. Long story short, that is supposed to be this commission collaborating with our internal city departments, both like our HR department, because they're overseeing all of our employees, but also like our Office of Public Safety that has like police and fire, our Office of Parks and Recreation, which does a lot of the work with our children's like after school activities and things like that. really collaborating with all of them, figuring out ways we can identify where we could improve gender equity or improve equity for those residents that are either employees or dealing with our services. And then create recommendations and kind of timelines as to what could be done to improve equity. So just an example would be something like if we were working with Parks and Rec and they said, oh, well, of all the kids that come to our city facilities, oh, Julian is here. That's wonderful. Of the demographics of all the kids that come to our city facilities, only and this is a random number, this is not a real number. Only 20% of them identify as female. And we take a step back and we think, well, that's crazy. We definitely would want to make sure that more girls are feeling like they can access our city recreation centers, be a part of those after school programs, get those opportunities, be uplifted by the city resources. And so we would work with them to say, okay, let's break this down. Is there a way you could make a new program that would encourage more girls to participate? Is there a way that you could open up new opportunities or maybe do different kinds of outreach to maybe after school programs or existing schools that might have girls that would like to be a part of this opportunity? And so it's very open-ended, but the reason we're bringing this up is that we have to start to develop kind of a plan as to how we want to do that. There's some options there. We could invite some department personnel to come to these meetings to talk through a little bit of what they do. And then it can be kind of a discussion back and forth as to what kind of recommendations we'd make. We also could create a special committee to do this outside of the Gender Equity Commission monthly meetings. So they would be meeting with folks in their own spare time. As well as we could do something like a survey, like a simple survey that I create that we send out to those departments to get more info so that we can start to create those recommendations. There's really a lot of flexibility there as to how we go about it. But after we make this 5-year action plan, we will finalize it in a document and it will be submitted both to the mayor and to city council for them to be aware of the kind of progress we want to make. And then on an annual basis, we have to give them an update as to how it's kind of all going. Even if it's not going perfectly, even if it's like, oh, we hoped this is going to get done in 2 years, but it's going to take 3 years, that's all right. It's just about ensuring that we're still prioritizing those efforts. So any thoughts, comments on anything I just said, kind of ideas for how we want to go about the 5-year action plan?
I like the last one, send to the departments and let them complete your survey and then get it back to us. I like that one.
Yeah, okay. I can talk a little bit more about what that might look like, if that's helpful, maybe. Okay, so it could be something like us creating a simple survey that asks stuff like, what services do you provide within your department to the public? And maybe like what the demographics are around those services. So I'm just going to use Parks and Rec again because it's an easy one. We could ask, what services do you provide? And they'll say things like, we do youth activities or extracurriculars, or we create internships or something along those lines. And we'd ask, okay, can you give us some demographics as to who gets to be a part of those things? And if we got that data back and we saw some disparities, not even just gender disparities, but also racial disparities, if we're seeing like 90% of all the people that get to be a part of the extracurriculars are white, that's obviously a disparity, even if it's perfectly even between men and women. And so maybe collecting some of that demographic data, asking about those services and trying to collect that can give the commission a better idea as to kind of those next steps forward as to what needs to happen. I'd also say, we don't have to create recommendations for every single department. It's really about what the commission itself identifies as important to focus on. But also, as soon as we identify like, hey, we see these disparities within this department, we want to improve those things, that department has to have a liaison to the Gender Equity Commission to work directly with us. Okay? So it's not all on us to make every recommendation. We can work with those internal personnel to be able to figure out exactly what would be the best way forward. Does that make sense?
And this gets a little like nitty gritty, but I do
Yeah.
think also part of that survey is asking them to identify some of those barriers that they see.
Yeah.
You know, they're the boots on the ground, and you know, if they're hearing from residents, oh, I would love to do that program, but it's not on a bus. Like there's no good bus
Yeah.
line to that
Yeah.
location, or things like that. I think would
Yeah.
really help us, especially since there's so many neighborhoods and so many
Yes.
facilities and different departments. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sorry, just to piggyback off of that,
Please.
to also ask them like, what steps have you taken to
Yeah.
address those issues that you have already identified? Because I think that gives us an idea of like if they already see these issues but they're not doing anything about them, that's a problem in itself. Especially if we're coming in and not knowing what their issues are yet.
Absolutely. And I also think that's helpful if they're hitting a roadblock that maybe we can help them with. Like maybe they want more racial diversity within maybe like those extracurricular programs, but they've done some outreach and they don't seem to see any change there. So like what other things can be recommended? What other things can that department do?
Mhm.
With help from the Gender Equity Commission, ideas and recommendations from us
Right.
as to being able to create more equity in those spaces. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Anybody else have ideas for kind of how we can go about working with these departments in like a survey, collecting some data from them to create that foundation to build the 5-year plan off of?
Not an
We
idea
have,
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to.
no, sorry. No, you're okay. I was gonna say, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but do we have direct organizations that we're gonna be partnering with to have more like uh similar to the 2050 plan, like these public forums, kind of like getting insight from local communities that the Gender Equity Commission doesn't like represent?
Yeah, Crystal, I think that's actually a phenomenal question. So the really great thing about that is that I think a really great first step would be to start to collect that information. But once we get some ideas as to the recommendations we'd want to make, I think it would be a good idea for us to do something along the lines of like a town hall or, something where we're inviting community members, the folks that are, running nonprofits and community orgs that are working with a lot of these residents directly to be able to also come and have some input to those recommendations. And also, and I think this is really important to say, it's very often that not everybody knows exactly where the city starts and ends and where the county starts and ends. And I always think those spaces are a really good place for when folks are like, hey, why aren't you doing more in this specific area, to be able to explain that and give them that agency to say, hey, it's not that we, for instance, don't care about Black maternal health. It's just that we don't oversee those health systems. And so, it would take us like working with Allegheny County or voters, residents pushing Allegheny County to be able to make changes in that specific area. So that is just an idea as well. I think that it always is a great kind of education to ensure that residents know why the commissioners are prioritizing certain things, why we're going in certain directions, and to understand kind of what our responsibility is in the grand scheme of things, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think
Yep, that makes perfect sense.
I think a town hall, I've done a town hall for the LGBTQIA Commission. It went very, very well. Honestly, not a super heavy lift. It's really about just like finding a location and then ensuring that everybody knows what's happening and encourage those organizations to come and bring people. But definitely something that I think can really help us to have that community input that we would like. Okay.
And just a question for clarification. Is there a like prescripted timeline for completion? Is there a time that we need to have this completed, or is this a little open-ended?
No, there isn't a specific timeline to have it completed. Obviously, I don't want to say sooner the better, but it is good to have the city have that direction. Um, Again, it doesn't have to be like excessively detailed, but it's really good if we have like a solid recommendation and then kind of a timeline as to when that should happen to be able not only to give like city council and the mayor an idea of what we're hoping to strive for, but also give residents an understanding as to like what this commission is doing and why it's important to have this commission in the city. So yeah, not necessarily something that has to be done like by the end of the year or by the first quarter of next year, but I would definitely say I think it's important maybe in the next 6 to 8 months that we really strive to get this into a place where it's clear, it's concise, it gives good direction and can be submitted to the mayor and city council. Great.
When can we expect, well, do we vote on to see if do we have to vote on, oh no, you said we didn't have to vote on to see if to move forward with
So yeah,
um,
I don't think there has to be a vote. I think there can be a motion to say that we are drafting a survey
yeah.
to develop and draft a survey to give to the city departments. Um, if that's something that we'd like to do, I think that's a great direction to go in. If that's kind of where the commission feels like it would be great to collect that information in the first place and then go from there.
I would like to know what the questions are and like how many are they?
Oh,
Because people are like kind of surveyed out.
no, yeah. I'll say
So,
this. I would start to draft that survey. Like if you say, oh, okay, we're going to create a survey to disseminate to the departments, it's not
right.
that like I'm like, oh, okay, great, Terry, and I just make the survey and I do it all myself. I would draft a survey and I would make sure all of the commissioners have eyes on it and can have input on it prior to it going to the city departments. Because exactly what you said, y'all have great ideas about what existing disparities have you identified, what steps have you taken, what is your demographic information.
Mhm.
But if after this meeting tonight, you think of another great question and you want that included on that survey, I'm not going to stop that from happening. So I would just draft the survey and then sometime in the next week or so, I would share that with all of you and we could go back and forth until we feel good about it before it goes to the city department. Is that okay?
Yep.
Great. Any
I'm
other
sorry.
questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Julian.
Hi. I'm sorry I was late. How many departments are there?
Mm, actually a phenomenal question, and I probably should know that off the top of my head. In my head, I want to say 12 or 13 total departments.
Hmm.
But and you may have missed this. I will say we don't have to create recommendations for every department if we don't feel that they're like we could send the surveys out to every single department. That's not a concern. But if, as we're looking at the data and the information, for instance, we're seeing a lot of equity and we don't have an immediate recommendation as to what can change or what can be done to make this better, that is okay for us to say, oh, well, I'm just going to use innovation and performance, our tech people, and say, oh, well, tech is actually has great gender equity. They have a lot of women in leadership. They have, ways for upward mobility for their employees when they're providing services. They're pretty equitable. We're not seeing any disparities here that we need to address in this moment. So we maybe wouldn't include that department in the larger 5-year plan. But that is not to say that we can't still work with them or have them come to the commission meeting or have them talk about a certain issue if we identify a disparity later.
Thank
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, I do have my last question for this. So let's just say there's 12 departments. What if there space for, because what if all 12 need to be worked on, need to be worked on? Is there space for four now, this year, 2 years, for this year, 2 years, for this year? Is there space for something like that? Or what we choose on the first is this is the whole 5-year plan?
I'll say it this way. We have to make a 5-year plan, but there is a huge amount of flexibility to what we include in that and what those annual updates look like. You know what I mean? So we can, for instance, do a 5-year plan and identify 6 departments, let's say, in that 5-year plan and say, hey, here are some clear recommendations and here are some clear guidelines and timelines as to what we'd like to see happen in those departments for us to see gender equity really be improved. And maybe we say we want to see improvement in those things in 2 to 4 years. But let's say a year and a half later, you're working with other departments, a seventh or an eighth department, and you realize, oh, actually, they also have some disparities. There is no reason why you can't include them in the annual report and say, hey, we also, as a part of our work, our ongoing work to evaluate gender inequities and ensure that we're recognizing them and addressing them, we saw that this department does not have many women in leadership or does not promote women very often or something along those lines. And so we have a recommendation for them as well to add to say that within the next 2 years, they need to do more professional opportunities to ensure that people have the ability to be promoted or to grow within their careers in the city government, those sorts of things. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Wonderful.
I have one question still on that.
Yeah.
So say we make a recommendation, and so, for example, we want to see feminine hygiene products in both women and men's bathrooms.
Yes.
And what incentive does the department have to say we are not doing that? We're not putting feminine hygiene products
Great
in the men's
question.
bathroom.
So, Julian, you came in a little late, but I will let you know that this wonderful Gender Equity Commission did pass the recommendation for free menstrual products in all city facilities.
Great.
The nice thing there is because that is a broad recommendation that would have to become a policy within the city government.
Mm.
If that is something where we are creating, where it would be like my responsibility to start writing that language, that legislation, and we present that to city council and city council passes it, that means every single city department, every single city facility has to do that. It wouldn't be, there wouldn't be any flexibility for one of the departments to say, oh, we actually don't want to include that in any of our facilities. Because at that point, city council has not only passed that as legislation, they also would have had to allocate money to us purchasing menstrual products and safe sex products and ensuring that they're included in our restrooms. So no way around that as long as city council gets on board with it, pretty much is the whole thought process there. Wonderful question though. Great. Anybody else? Okay, so do I hear a motion to allow me to draft a survey?
I motion that
I
Adrian,
second.
thank you,
Yeah.
the survey.
Okay.
We have a second. Are we gonna do all who agree?
All those in favor of me creating a drafted survey to be able to collect information from the city departments, please say aye.
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 All those against, please say nay. And I'm sorry, I missed who said the second. Who seconded Julian?
Crystal.
That was me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Crystal. All right, moving along. I hope that we don't go too much over, but I just want to make sure we hit all of the big stuff today. The next one, again, not really something to vote on, but something that to be aware of. Another responsibility of the Gender Equity Commission is to evaluate the city's budget on a yearly basis and to give any recommendations if we are seeing some disparities and we think that there is some way to improve those disparities with the use of city dollars. So that might look like us allocating more money to professional development for employees, or something like us ensuring that we're encouraging more lighting and clear signage on construction projects to ensure safety, things like that. So that is all to say, we have Avery, one of our commissioners who works in the Office of Management and Budget. I have asked the Office of Management and Budget to either have Avery or somebody from the Office of Management and Budget come and visit us next month to go through a presentation of what the drafted budget is for this year. It will be published on the 30th of this month. The mayor has to publish his draft at the end of this month, but it won't actually be approved by city council until, I believe, December. So if at our next meeting, we have a full PowerPoint that breaks down kind of where all of that money is going, it gives us the time to be able to develop any recommendations we might have for that budget. Does that make sense to everyone? Great.
Yeah.
And in case you've never looked at a city budget before, I promise the Office of Management and Budget actually does a really incredible job of making it super accessible, breaking it down, kind of explaining any items that I was unfamiliar with in the past. So should be pretty simple, and we should be able to get through it pretty easily. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we're going to have somebody from Office of Management and Budget here next month to talk through that so we can create any recommendations that might be beneficial. Alrighty, so those were our big new business items. We have one announcement that I wanted to share with everybody, which is Rachel Shepard, our commissioner from, she is also the executive for the Commission of Human Relations for the city, which deals with all of the individual discrimination cases that residents might have. So everything from experiencing discrimination on the basis of your gender, your race, your age, your disability, etc., kind of all goes through Rachel and her team. And she also happens to be a commissioner on our commission. She's not present right now, but she did share with me that there's an upcoming event that she wanted everybody to be aware of on October 30th, that the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh is having an event that is about legal protections for survivors at home and in work. And so I will share all that info out with any of you if you want to attend. But yeah, I just wanted to ensure that that was passed along to everyone. Any questions there? And I will share that information with you after this without a problem. Wonderful. Seeing none. The only other announcement I wanted to make is after discussions with Julian yesterday, shout out to Julian, we were talking about some of those things that the commission doesn't necessarily have direct control over, but might be able to support in it, like issues that we think are really important. And a big part of that is maternal health and new kind of parents, especially with young children. Julian brought up that it might be really beneficial for us to do something along the lines of like a diaper drive or something like collecting baby clothes, and then donating them to a local organization like the Diaper Bank or something, any local organization that can make sure that young parents, or excuse me, new parents are able to have access to, onesies, diapers, pacifiers, bottles, etc. The reason this is not a vote right now is that I would like to do a little bit more research in what organizations we could partner with on that. I definitely don't want to like duplicate something that might already be happening. And if there are other drives that are happening, I'd love to make sure that they're aware of it, like other organizations in Pittsburgh are aware of it and can support that, and get that out to their own networks. So just wanted everybody to be aware of that. If we want to discuss that more, I'm more than happy to, but it would probably just be a big box at the bottom of the CCB where people could come in and drop off any kind of baby supplies they might have. And then we would obviously donate to that all to the organization. Any questions there?
Not a
Wonderful.
question, more so a statement. There's a couple organizations like Mother of All Baby Showers, Jeremiah's Place. There's a diaper bank that's in Homewood that would be great that we could collaborate with. And also other nonprofits are also looking to do things like this as
Yeah.
a second time mom that is due in April. I love seeing things like this. And so happy to, as I'm seeking out resources, happy to share those with the committee as I'm coming across those as well.
Thank you for that, Crystal, because I was going to say like Mothering Forward is a great organization that is in the city, and like they're kind of new in the city.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like I'm sure we all have like our own network. So maybe at our next commission meeting, we all bring like a handful of organizations that we know and are familiar with and we can partner with, or however we want to roll out our participation in like a diaper drive or anything like that.
Exactly. I think that's a great idea. And yeah, there's some flexibility there, if those things are already happening, we as a commission can uplift them. If they would like, another place to have collections, we can definitely do that in the CCB or in any other city facilities that we think would be beneficial. We still have access to our senior centers and our recreation centers. If we want to put a donation box at some of those and say, hey, if you don't have the chance to come downtown, but you happen to be near this recreation center, you can donate any baby supplies that you might have. Especially as we're getting into colder months, I always think that's super important to be able to give people all of the supplies they might need to have their babies be healthy and happy. And so Yeah, in the meantime, if anybody has any ideas for those organizations, feel free to email them to me or to the entire commission. That's totally fine too. And we'll start to collect that list so that we can figure out how to do that outreach and ensure that we're being as supportive as we can. Okay?
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, everybody. Perfectly on time. I'm so proud of everybody. Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Wonderful, Julian. Do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
Terry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Yay. All right, everybody have a wonderful month.
Good
I
night.
will follow up with some more information about all the stuff we talked about, but otherwise, please be safe and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night,
Good
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Everyone.